You're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, 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 other than day one.
Donald Trump has successfully moved the Overton window in a way that is as dangerous for the future of democracy in this country as anything else.
This is what Vout and Project 2025 wanted.
He's daring Tom Homan to come and arrest him. Should he do it? I would do it if I were Tom. I think it's great.
They control the Congress, they control the White House, and they control the courts. And so, of course, they're massively, massively overreaching. And yes, they are getting away with it right now.
This is clearly a man who cannot tolerate criticism of him or what he does, which is exactly what authoritarianism is all about.
The New York Times is just as fake as CNN and MSDNC. They really are the enemy of the people.
What he is saying, rather bluntly, if you stand up to Donald Trump, he will punish you.
Protesters in Philadelphia, state capitals in California, Minnesota, Michigan, Texas, Wisconsin, Indiana, and others showed up to oppose Trump, Musk, and Project 2025.
US and President Trump has overseen America's largest military parade in decades as nationwide protests take place against his leadership.
Demonstrations are happening right across the United States today to oppose the Trump administration.
Two visions of America. On a day the country's deepening divide was there for all the world to see.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf, and you're watching Logically Left right here, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, on the big platforms. Well, Facebook, ironically, being the biggest, but also the least profitable. Weird. Weird how that works out. Might be a little shadow banning going on here. Deprioritization of political content, which is kind of why we are here in the first place. You know, with the authoritarianism and the fascism that has taken over our country, because we do not have, we do not have information here. And of course, there are people who make sure that one side gets the information and the other side does not. Mainly the other side, making sure the other side does not get actual news, where they're fed a steady diet of fake news and outrage porn. But that's pretty much it. So, yeah, that's kind of why we're here. But anyway, I got a good show for you today. We're going to talk about some important things. We got Judge Piro, once again, losing yet another prosecution. Perhaps, you know, it's because they're nothing more than political prosecutions / persecution. Could be. I've got the details on that. We have another Army veteran that was charged with conspiracy. I kid you not. Look, you know, we've got all these political prosecutions, weaponization of government against people who are protesting against ICE. So, I mean, that is just, that's a real problem, okay? What we have is we have a government that is just targeting people that they don't like for doing things that they don't like, pushing back against them. And it's just the full force of the law against people. It's absolutely ridiculous. So that's what we've got here. We're going to talk about that. We have more stuff. Of course, we do have Trump's unconstitutional order on elections and the real purpose behind it, of course. And we also have a billionaire who has called out rising inequality. Oh, that's really interesting. Very interesting indeed. But hey, you know what? He does have some important things to say, and there is some truth to it. And so we'll dive into that. It is just kind of funny how, you know, billionaires like, you know, this income inequality is maybe a bad thing. It might lead us to authoritarianism. No, really? Oh my God. Can you believe it?
Really?
I am shocked that you would say such a thing. Taking such a brave stance at this point in time. Okay. Look, it just, we have been warning about these people for a very long time. Okay. You know, how the oligarchy is going to lead to fascism. And now fascism is here. And these people are like, you know, maybe we ought to do something about that income inequality before it gets bad. I know. It sounds like I'm dumping on him too much. When really, again, he is right. It's just one of those things where it's frustrating, you know, warning about these things for such a long time, only have no one listen. And then when it's too late, people saying, oh, you know, maybe you ought to do something about that whole income inequality thing. Oh, so, but here I am. It's Tuesday. Hopefully you had a okay, because I don't think anything is going to be all that good, but an okay holiday break. I know there were a lot of protests that happened over the Labor Day weekend, and that's wonderful because right now, under Trump and the Republicans, people are losing their rights. Their labor is losing power. Not that it had a lot of power over the last 50 or so years, really hasn't, but they continue to lose more and more of it. But anyway, let's get into the stories here. Let's talk about Janine Piro first. And here we go. Judge Janine Piro, who, by the way, is the Attorney General for D.C. now, she keeps losing and losing and losing in her quest to bring Donald Trump's law and order to the great city, the great capital of the United States. Now, last week, she was undone by, once again, Judge Zia M. Faruqi, who had handed her yet another legal defeat after attempting to jail a veteran for protesting against ICE. Now, the local attorney and West Point graduate, Anthony Bryant, was arrested early on Monday morning on charges of assaulting, resisting, or impeding police, threatening a federal official, and threatening to kidnap or injure a person. Now, the issue with that arrest is that it was, well, how should we put it? It was, bullshit. That's a good word. It's true, so much so that Judge Faruqi called it, quote, one of the weakest requests for detention that he had ever seen. Well, wait, how come? How come? Well, let's get into the details, right? So Piro's office alleged that Bryant had approached National Guardsmen who were patrolling 14th Street on Sunday night and allegedly yelled, quote, these are our streets. I mean, yes, yes, it is true. But then allegedly added, I'll kill you. Oh, okay, well, that seems serious. Piro then claims that Bryant threw his shoulder into one of the guardsmen's shoulders. During his arrest, the police then found a legally registered handgun on his person. Oh, no! Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, though, all right? But wasn't he just, by carrying, not even open carry, just on his person, right, that he was just exercising his Second Amendment rights? What would be the problem with that? Where's the NRA? Where's the gun rights people coming up to defend him? Oh, right. It's because he's black. That's right. Look, this man, he didn't point the weapon at anybody. He didn't brandish it. He did nothing. He was just carrying it. And, you know, again, Second Amendment. Thought we were supposed to have that right. But, okay. Now, that said, what about the alleged threat to these National Guardsmen? I mean, saying, oh, I'll kill you while having a gun on your person is, I mean, yeah, that's their threat there, right? But what Bryant's attorneys are saying is that the police report. I know. No, what are you saying that the cops could have lied? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Because their police report failed to mention that the guardsmen were yelling racial slurs at Bryant, probably prompting him to come back with that alleged threat. Now, I say that this is all alleged because there's no video of the incident. National Guardsmen are not required to wear body cameras, and so we don't know. We don't know what actually happened. How convenient, but also fortuitous for Mr. Bryant. The prosecution is unable, as of this point, to prove their claims. Now, Bryant was released after his initial arrest, but then was rearrested again and placed in jail last Wednesday on the order of Judge G. Michael Harvey. Now, on Thursday, the day after, Judge Faruqi stepped in and was like, this is perhaps one of the weakest requests for detention I have seen, and something that prior to 2 weeks ago would have been unthinkable in this courthouse. He added that the government has a as close to zero chance of demonstrating that Bryant was a threat. Yeah. To charge people for what seems to be lesser conduct and then say that they're so dangerous that they have to be locked up, it puts prosecutors in an impossible position. As a result, Bryant, of course, was released from jail, but was ordered to hand over his firearms and advised to avoid any sort of tense situations. Faruqi also noted that tossing Bryant in jail for such a minor infraction is pretty much contradictory to the release of, the J6ers, for example. The J6ers, who had been jailed on much more serious charges, okay, but then pardoned by our illustrious orange president. And that's the thing, right? So, I mean, it's pretty clear. It should be pretty clear to everyone here that these are nothing more than political prosecutions. That's it. Now, of course, that's pretty concerning, but also comical. All right. Why is it comical? It's because they're so blatantly political that at least 3 different grand juries, just an example, right, did not vote to indict a DC woman for, who had allegedly placed herself between ICE agents and someone that they were detaining. They also failed to secure an indictment against a man who threw a Subway sandwich at a federal agent. The sandwich man. They couldn't. So I know the joke is, well, I mean, getting an indictment is so easy. You could indict a ham sandwich. Well, they obviously couldn't indict the man who threw a sandwich. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. Now, look, in both cases, by the way, they had tried to get felony charges against these people, and the grand juries were like, felony charge? Felony charge for what? For that? No, these are misdemeanors. These are misdemeanors. Okay, are you kidding me? Are you absolutely kidding me? This is just another example of how this woman is nothing more than a partisan, political hack. Okay, and that's the entire reason that she was put in that position in the first place, because she was going to do this. Now, the only thing is, I'm pretty sure they expected for all the judges, all the judiciary that they have not captured, by the way, to roll over and allow for these very partisan political witch hunts, okay, and prosecutions to go on without any challenge. Thankfully, they were wrong on that count, and they haven't completely taken over the judiciary, as of right now, at least. But still. Again, for all the talk of being able to indict a ham sandwich, though, it turns out that the sandwich actually had to commit a a crime first. Who knew? Who knew? Except everyone who knew what they were talking about. Okay. What's the big 2 o'clock announcement? I have no idea. Probably a show of, oh yeah, Trump's still alive. He's still alive. And there you go. Okay. Let's move on here to another case of political prosecution. Plenty of that. An Army veteran has been charged with conspiracy for simply protesting against ICE. Now, Bajun Mavawala II is a former Army sergeant who had survived a roadside car bomb, okay, during a special operations mission in Afghanistan. So a literal war hero, okay? Now, he was charged in July with a conspiracy to impede or injure officers after joining a demonstration against ICE in Spokane, Washington. So now his case, of course, has legal experts concerned about the Trump regime's attack on the First Amendment. Yeah, what happened to those freedom of speech warriors, the people who were standing up and trying to defend the First Amendment? Oh, right. Yeah, it turns out the ones that are on the right wing never really cared so much about that. Now, the protest on June 11th that led to Mavawala's arrest was pretty confrontational, to be fair. And what do I mean by that? Were there scores of injured police officers, kind of like and people trying to beat them down with pipes and bear spray? No, you're thinking of January 6th, but still, a government van had been vandalized. Vandalized. Can you see the government? The windshield was broken on that van, and the tires. The air was let out of the tires. Oh my God! Oh my God! Obviously, these vandals needed to be stopped. Well, yeah, about 24 people were arrested on the scene. However, Mavawala wasn't among them. He wasn't even there, okay? In fact, over a month had passed before the FBI showed up at his door to come arrest him. So now the indictment alleges that protesters had struck federal officers and had let the air out of the tires of an ICE transport. Now, Mavawala, however, was not charged with any obstruction or assault, but was instead charged with conspiracy to impede or injure officers. Why? Apparently, he had physically blocked the driveway of the federal facility and had physically pushed against officers despite orders to disperse and efforts to remove them from the property. Now, he has, of course, pleaded not guilty. He has no criminal record and was out there protesting peacefully. His family says that he is committed to nonviolent acts of civil disobedience. Now, there is a video of the protest on Instagram showing him basically having a brief scuffle with a masked police officer. Someone wearing mask and sunglasses, hiding their identity, and yet they are not the criminals. No, it is this man who is peacefully protesting and blocking entrance that is the real criminal here, apparently. Now, he had locked arms with other demonstrators in order to block a gate. So, yes, he was engaging in civil disobedience, which, again, normally would be a misdemeanor, okay? But with the Trump regime, they regularly upcharge people with ridiculous crimes and like felonies, okay? That's pretty much it. Look, the conspiracy count that this man has been charged with carries a maximum penalty of 6 years in prison a $250,000 fine and 3 years of supervised release. That is a lot for blocking an officer who was doing what very well could have been an illegal arrest of an immigrant, because regularly ICE agents have been going after people and not giving them due process. Okay, so blocking that, which could have been an illegal arrest for all he knew, that's enough to get you 6 years in prison or $250,000 and a $250,000 fine. Look, those charges generally are reserved for more dangerous people. He doesn't seem like he's all that dangerous. And in fact, if he was, the judge wouldn't have allowed him to be released on his own recognizance while awaiting trial, and certainly wouldn't have allowed him to travel to Disneyland for a previously planned family vacation. I mean, I'm just saying, like, if he were that much of a real danger, they wouldn't have allowed him to do that. Okay, these charges are absolutely ridiculous, and everyone knows it. Everyone knows it. In fact, the previous prosecutor, Richard Barker, who at one point was the acting U.S. attorney for Eastern Washington State, resigned. That's about 2 days before this man's indictment. In his statement, he had written, "I'm grateful that I never had to sign an indictment or file a brief that I didn't believe in." So as soon as he left, they got another person in. The current acting U.S. attorney, nominated by, of course, President Donald Trump, is Pete Serrano, a former litigator for the Silent Majority Foundation, a conservative advocacy group. In February, Serrano filed an amicus brief in support of Donald Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship. The man has no prosecutorial experience and has described the January 6th Capitol rioters as political prisoners. So the Capitol rioters, political prisoners, but you dare try to get in the middle of an ICE immigration arrest, which could be illegal, then you are worse than any of that. You're one of the worst criminals ever. We got to come after you with felonies and conspiracy. There you go. Man's a political hack, and he is doing obvious political prosecutions. In fact, Luis Miranda, former chief spokesman for the Department of Homeland Security under former President Joe Biden, he called this a, quote, test case to see how far they can go. Yeah. Robert Chang, a law professor at the University of California, Irvine, said, "It seems like what we have here is an issue of selective prosecution. This will lead to a chilling effect on free speech under the First Amendment." Again, what happened to defending free speech and protest? Oh, right, they never believed in it. Not for anyone who does not agree with them. Look, charging him with conspiracy is obviously intentional. They are trying to send a message. According to Bruce Antkowek, a former federal prosecutor who teaches at St. Vincent in Pennsylvania, said this, quote, "Federal conspiracy charges are a wondrous thing. It is a vast net, which you can use to catch a bunch of people. Look, under the law, and it's a very vague law, prosecutors won't have to prove that Malva had blocked the bus or even attacked any agents. All you've got to do is prove the intent to do so. You got to prove intent. Quote, you have to prove an agreement. You don't have to prove that people sat down together and made a pledge," he said. "You don't even have to write up an agreement that they have verbally, but you have to prove that these people agreed to act in concert." Look, because of how broad this is, prosecutors typically will use their discretion. However, you have a Trump political hack as a prosecutor now. So he's out there, he's doing political prosecutions. And so, yeah, they're doing that, and they're trying to take this as far as they can get away with. That's what they're doing. And so, look, And Cowick says he expects the Justice Department to bring even more conspiracy charges in the months ahead. So to just ramp up the use of charging people with conspiracy. And I agree. Yes, they're gonna do more of that because it's one of those broad powers, broad tools that they can use to come after people for basically political reasons, for not being in favor of whatever illegal thing Trump wants to do this week. That's what it is. Now, Jennifer Chacon, a Stanford University law professor, said that she wouldn't be shocked if ICE was looking at basically monitoring social media, doing it even more so in order to try to bring more cases like the one that they have brought against Mulva. Quote, you could just view this as an attempt to send a message to everyone who feels a sense of justice and moral outrage over the ICE raids. You could face prosecution too. Exactly. Look, it is pretty clear that this regime wants to send a message, wants to intimidate people, the majority of which who are outraged by the ICE raids. You even got some Trump voters, okay, that are thinking, whoa, I didn't vote for this. The ICE has gone way too far. I'm not talking about the cultists. I'm talking about some of the people who were convinced, low information voters who were convinced by some of the ads and like some of the things that they've seen on Fox News, when they're at the gym or something, like, oh wow, immigrants, oh wow, oh we got a real problem with criminals. Well, I don't want criminals on the streets. Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Let's get rid of the worst of the worst. That's what they're saying, the worst of the worst. And Kamala Harris is also talking about doing more, cracking down on immigration too. So obviously, I'm going to go with the guy who's a little bit tougher, right? Who's made more of an effort to go after the criminals. Well, those people, they're like, oh my God, you're not going after the criminals at all. You're not going after the worst of the worst. What is going on here? I didn't vote for that. We didn't vote for going after the farm laborers and the workers at Home Depot. That's not what I voted for. Well, you did, though. I mean, I'm just saying you did. And if you believe Trump, a well-known liar, then that's kind of on you, right? But look, he's going after the lowest hanging fruit in order to pad the deportation numbers, to give Stephen Miller a chubby. That's basically what happens here. Okay, he watches these deportation numbers, and well, he either gets mad because they're not good enough, but once they hit those the numbers that he wants, 3,000 a day, he's gonna be like, oh, it feels so good. Oh God, he'll have the first orgasm he's ever had. Okay, and that's basically what it's about. He hates immigrants. This man. Look, this has never been about the law. It has never been about protecting American jobs or protecting American families. This has always been about white nationalism. And now it's about punishing anyone who goes out there objecting to it. That's the reality in America now. We have a white nationalist authoritarian government that is doing selective political prosecutions of anyone who stands up and protests against their agenda. Hate to say it, but yeah, it's exactly what we were warning everyone about. Yeah, they got exactly what they voted for. That's true. Not just immigrants, all people that aren't white. That is another good point. Yeah, it's true. That's why I say it's white nationalist. Okay. Moving on here, let's go to Trump's orders on elections. Here we go. Over the Labor Day weekend, Trump said that he plans to issue a new executive order that would basically be a federal takeover of our electoral system. In fact, on Truth Social, okay, the president, yes, I know.
Truth essential.
He posted this. Voter ID must be part of every single vote, no exceptions. I will be doing an executive order to that end. Also, no mail-in voting, except for those that are very ill and the faraway military. Use paper ballots only. President DJT. Now, look, this is obviously unconstitutional. Regardless of how you feel about voter ID, the Constitution does not give the president the power to do a takeover of elections. Period. But what it's doing in red states is giving lawmakers there the impetus and a plan to further enact voter ID requirements. Okay, so, and to restrict elections. Now, here's the thing, right? Every time I do one of these segments about voter ID, I get some people in the comment sections, even some people that, say like, oh yeah, I'm on the left and I see the way that Europe does things and Europe does voter ID. Okay, so let me address that real quick, all right? I'd actually be okay with some form of voter ID, but only if it were free and automatic, right? Kind of like automatic voter registration. I mean, for example, you hit the voting age and the government just automatically sends you a voter card, free of charge. It's got all your info on it, and then there you go vote. What if you lose it? Well, don't worry. They've got a record of sending you that ID, and so therefore you don't even really need it. There's a record of it. Okay, so there you go. It's got all your info. You're all set to vote. No problem. Now, if you're homeless or you move, maybe you give them a call or something, or you travel to an office if you're able to, and they set you up with a current card or whatever. Okay, and now that system, understand that any voter ID system is still going to be a bit of a pain in the ass, and still personally, I think it would be unnecessary, but the sake of argument on voter ID, if they did something like that, I could live with it. I mean, I already live in a state where we already have voter ID. So when I go to vote, I have to present my license. Okay, so that's why I'm saying I can live with that. But that is not what the current voter ID system is. It is filled with fees. It is filled with costs. It is filled with wait times. Okay, and not everybody has the time to do that. This system that we have now puts up barriers in front of specifically elderly and disabled voters, as well as people that live in rural areas or inner cities, people that do not have the time or the money or maybe even the transportation needed to go get a government ID. And remember, there are only specific types of IDs that are accepted. Can't use student ID, even though it is an ID that has your name and your picture on it. No, it can't use that. But, you can use an ID, for example, related to your gun registration, I believe. Something like that. Oh, yeah, no, that's fine. But not a student ID. Yes, very clear. Very clear what they're doing here. Again, voter ID, as it currently stands, impacts minority communities more heavily than white communities and people who are poor and or disabled. And that is basically the point, because a lot of those voters tend to be more Democrats. They're obviously trying to stop primarily Democratic voters from turning out in federal elections. There is a reason for that. Okay. Which is also why Trump is trying to ban mail-in ballots, despite having used them himself. He is a hypocrite. Oh, what a surprise! What a shocker! But not really. No. Look, at the end of the day, these executive orders, like many of his executive orders, are blatantly unconstitutional. Now, one of the problems is he keeps cranking them damn things out, and bogging down the courts. The courts cannot get to these orders and block them fast enough. And that is pretty much what they're counting on. Look, the states, the Constitution clearly gives them the primary authority to regulate their own elections, right? And not only that, but it also empowers Congress to, at any time by law, make or alter such regulations. So now, if they really wanted to, Congress is back. Congress is back. So Congress could pass a law. They could, yes, but they would actually have to go through the democratic process in order to do so. Flooding the zone, exactly. But again, the president cannot oversee elections. He cannot take over elections. He is not a dictator or a king, period. That said, the March executive order directed the Attorney General to take all the necessary actions in order to prevent ballots mailed before Election Day, but which arrive after, from being counted. And they're doing that, of course, because of the whole red mirage. Okay? Remember, these are legal ballots. These are legal votes from legal voters that he does not want to counted because a lot of them tend to be Democrats. That's it. That's really it. Now, that said, Republicans actually have used mail-in voting almost as much as Democrats do. And so, I mean, will he end up hurting himself, his own voters? Well, look, a lot of things that Trump has already done has hurt his own voters. But you know what? He doesn't care about that. He already got into power, and he did say, oh, you just have to vote for me this last time, and then you'll never have to vote again. I mean, that sounds a little concerning, right? When you say, well, you'll never have to vote again. Never. Wait, is that because you are trying to become the dictator of the United States? Yeah, there's some big concerns there. Okay, huge concerns. But look, these are mainly Democratic voters that he's trying to stop from turning out. Okay, that order, by the way, also held up in court because it's wildly unconstitutional. At the end of the day, I think we should be making voting easier, not more difficult. There's no legitimate reason for any of this stuff. None. The amount of voter fraud is about 0.3%. Okay? The number of illegals voting in elections is even less. Okay? A handful within the last 20 years or so. These are not real issues. Okay? The real issue is voter suppression, which these measures obviously do. And that is the point. That is the purpose. Again, I go back to every time I talk about this issue, every time I talk about voting, voter suppression, etc., I go back to Paul Weyrich, the godfather of the modern conservative movement, who famously said, we do not want more people voting. We do not want more people to vote. We don't want good government because, that's against our aims. Our aims are to dismantle government and sell it off to corporations. But what he said in the Goo Syndrome speech, and you can look it up. I show it here all the time, but if you haven't seen it, I would be shocked. But nonetheless, if you haven't seen it, Paul Weyrich, Goo Syndrome, look it up. He basically admits that, yeah, we like voter suppression. We want to suppress votes because when more people show up and vote, we lose. We tend to lose elections, and we don't want that to happen. So, yeah, when people turn out, we lose. But when people don't show up or when people are suppressed, then we win. We cheat. That's it. And they have continued to follow that playbook even after, I believe, Weyrich on his deathbed was like, ooh, my bad. Maybe I was a bad person in my life, and I regret it. They continued using his playbook anyway. Okay? They depressed turnout. They gerrymander the hell out of districts. It's like what they're doing in Texas, okay? And have obviously been using social media to lie, to make people believe that there's a rash of illegal voters that are using the mules to harvest the ballots and all these terrible things, right? Conspiracy theories. That's what they're doing. These conspiracy theories are spread with the goal of making sure that Republicans win elections. And it has been wildly successful, while, of course, keeping the opposition at home. And again, the opposition, Democrats have been bringing a knife to a gunfight for the past 30, 40 years, okay? I mean, you could even call them, controlled opposition if you want, who never seem to be able to fight, to put up a real challenge against any of this crap Republicans are pulling. Oh, don't boo, vote. Oh, you've been suppressed? Can't really do anything about that. Oh, what can we do? We have no leverage. Well, there you go. But nonetheless, these Republicans will continue to cheat and rig these elections. Yes, I believe voter suppression is rigging, making it sure that, people can't show up to vote, which basically stops them from having a government that represents them. Yeah, it's rigging to me. So that's what they're doing. That's what the plan is. And Trump is just continuing to enact it. Okay. Last story here. We have a billionaire who is calling out income inequality? What the hell? A billionaire hedge funder is warning that income inequality is turning the country into an authoritarian state, and is criticizing other business leaders for not speaking out forcefully enough. This is Ray Dalio, the founder of the hedge fund Bridgewater Associates, who had spoken recently to the Financial Times. Now, in this interview, he talked about some different things, but pointed out that, hey, the extreme gap in wealth that we have, that's turning us into an authoritarian state. And along with that, the collapse of trust in government, in our systems of government, is creating more and more extreme policies in the United States. Now, he has said that many Western countries have been affected by the growing income inequality, which leads voters to turn to increasingly more autocratic rulers in order to try to correct that balance. Now, of course, these autocratic rulers never do because, they tend to benefit from these systems. But anyway, here's this quote. I think what is happening now, politically and socially, is analogous to what happened around the world in the 1930s to 40s period. Classically, increased wealth and value gaps lead to increased populism of the right and populism of the left, and irreconcilable differences between them that cannot be resolved through the democratic process. So, democracies weaken, and more autocratic leadership increases as a large percentage of the population want government leaders to get control of the system to make things work well for them. Now, here's the thing. In the US, it is the right wing that is overwhelmingly turned to authoritarianism. The left, the actual left in America, what little we have of it, is like, yo, can we have health care, please? So you got the right wing, it's like, more authoritarianism, let's crush people's free speech rights, let's crush their faces. And the left's like, healthcare? Can we have healthcare, please? That's what we want. Look, the populist left here is just calling for things that regular people want. They are nowhere near extreme. Nowhere near as extreme as the right wing has gotten. Remember, they want to deport all immigrants. Whether you're here legally or not, they will take away your legal status they already have and ship you off to El Salvador, which they have. They have tried to ban trans people from existence. They are trying to ban gay marriage. That now Kim Davis has already gone back to the Supreme Court to argue that they should overturn Obergefell. And you had Justice Clarence Thomas, who was like, when he helped to overturn Roe, was like, you know what? We should go back and revisit some of these other cases like Obergefell. So there's that. Okay, that's what they're doing. They're putting people in prison for free speech now, charging them with conspiracy, or going after people who burn a flag. Again, that is protected speech. You may not like it, but it is protected. There was already a Supreme Court decision on flag burning that says, actually, yes, that is protected speech. That's what's going on here. Okay? All of that. There is no equal comparison between the right and the left these days. So I just want to point that out for all those people that are like, I can't tell the difference between both sides. You ain't paying attention, buddy. Or you are a member of the right. If you cannot tell the difference between both the right and the left, then you are probably a member of the right. Just wanted to point that out. Again, populist left wants things that the majority of Americans want. The right wing, what they want are things that are very unpopular. You look at all the polls, right? But at the end of the day, they want a dictator daddy to go and punish their political enemies, and that is exactly what we are dealing with these days. Okay? So, but anyway, let's move on. Dalio, by the way, Dalio is not some wild-eyed leftist. He's one of those debt and deficit hawks, okay? So, now in his books, for example, Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order and How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle, he has described how large annual spending deficits and unsustainable debt growth has brought the U.S. economy to the brink of a debt crisis, a situation that had worsened over many years. So he said, quote, "The great excesses that are now projected as a result of the new budget will likely cause a debt-induced heart attack in the relatively new future. I'd say 3 years, give or take a year or two." Oh, well, that doesn't sound good. That sounds very, very bad, actually. Now, it is important to note, though, that much of our debt is a result of massive tax cuts for the rich. First, the Bush tax cuts, followed by Donald Trump's first round, and now second round of tax cuts for the rich. They're pretty much the reason here that we have $37 trillion in debt, okay? And no, I'm not saying that COVID, what happened during COVID, the COVID spending, for example, didn't contribute to that. It did, okay? And of course, the 3 unfunded wars in the Middle East started by George W. Bush as well as our military adventurism all over the world. Since then, the Pentagon budget's nearly $1 trillion every year, over $800 billion, and continuing to rise. And again, there is the Reagan tax cuts as well. And so you have all of these things. It ain't poor people on food stamps. It ain't immigrants. It's rich people that have been hoarding wealth and not paying their taxes. That is why we're in such a giant financial hole. So now, this guy went after Trump also for trying to take over the Federal Reserve, as well as having the government buy shares in giant corporations. Dalio said attacks on the Fed would undermine the confidence in the Fed, defending the value of money, and make holding dollar denominated debt assets less attractive, which would weaken the monetary order as we know it. Well, I mean, we've already seen the monetary order get weakened. The dollar has lost about 10% of its value since January. So there you go. But he said, quote, "I'm just describing the cause and effect relationships that are driving what is happening. And by the way, during such times, most people are silent because they are afraid of retaliation if they criticize. Yes, that is true among some of the wealthy and business owners. However, others, they are silent because they're okay with this. They're okay with what's happening, okay, with the fascism. There are a lot of business owners that are not bothered by authoritarians. Why is that? It's because they get tax cuts and deregulation under right-wing authoritarians. That's it. And even if they might not personally like the dictators, I doubt that there's a lot of people in the business community that do like Trump. They shut their mouths because they're afraid of losing tax cuts and are afraid of being targeted with regulation, which again is something that dictators often do. Everything that's going on is why neoliberalism is a great example of neoliberalism that leads to fascism. Look, conditions get bad because of the extreme wealth concentration driven by neoliberal policies. And so people find that regardless of whatever party's in charge, the rich keep getting richer while they keep losing out. And again, that's a result of money in politics, where you have these rich people that buy off both parties. That's what happens. And so people keep getting screwed and screwed and screwed, squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, until there's a strong man that comes along and promises to fix everything. Now, of course, the strong man never fixes anything because they're a product of that system. They thrive on it. And when they get into power, they make money and they get more power. They concentrate that power. That's what makes them a strong man. Now, we should know this as a society because it's not like we haven't seen this before. No, but unfortunately, there are too many people out there who do not know their history. And governments like ours now have been working to suppress history, to beat down workers, to outlaw labor unions, and go after anyone who points out where this system is heading. Now, look, there are hopes in people like Zohran Mamdani, right? But at the same time, you have billionaires who cause this problem by purchasing weak Democratic politicians and funding Republicans who are fascist. Well, they don't like that solution. What solution is that? Taxing the rich. That's it. Look, between the years of 1940 to about 1973, the United States actually had an amazing economy and a lot of upward mobility in the classes. You could actually start out from a lower class, mainly if you're white, let's be honest. But you could start out in a lower class and work your way up to a middle class. You could do that. And one of the reasons that it's like that is because we taxed rich people over 90%. And I'm not saying that, all rich people were taxed on all of their money at 90%. No, it's marginal. Okay, you got to understand how marginal taxes work. So basically, if you make over a certain amount of money, then that higher tax bracket kicks in. So most of the time, they weren't actually paying 90%. In fact, the majority of companies of rich people would actually reinvest the money back into their businesses and into their workforces to avoid the taxation. So that's why you can point out that, well, they didn't really ever pay 90%. Yeah, it's because they reinvested a lot of their money. And this is before you had politicians that created giant loopholes big enough to drive a truck through. Okay, so that's it. So look, what this meant was, for a time, we created a wealthier middle class. Wow. And they could actually afford the stuff that they worked for to make. Yes. But again, what changed? Money in politics, the corporate capture of our government. Ronald Reagan cutting taxes on the rich when he was president. Defunding universities. Again, that was a Ronald Reagan thing, right? When he was governor of California. His education secretary was like, we need to stop funding universities because we are in danger of creating an educated proletariat. We do not like that. Then You also had the erosion of labor rights. Once again, Ronald Reagan, it's almost like this guy is, I don't know, patient zero for where everything started to go wrong. Yes, he crushed some of the labor unions and did a whole bunch of other things that were basically the start of why everything went wrong. Fast forward since then, about 50 years. We don't have a middle class anymore. Rich people have captured pretty much all of the economic gains over that last period of time. Well, we are getting, economic recessions, which have battered everyone else but the rich and have made us poorer than each generation before us. The baby boomers essentially were the last generation to have done better than their parents. Each following generation has actually fared worse. An economy that has been rigged against them. Trump's only the latest example of how bad it has become. But for my life, this month I'm going to be 42, right? Things have not been good my entire life. Okay? And have been steadily getting worse and worse and worse. There is very little economic mobility these days. And a lot of this is a result of course, the billionaires and the policymakers that they have purchased in order to pass laws that benefit their donors at our expense. Now, this guy gets some credit for getting it, kind of. I wish more billionaires would get it, although, really, if I got my wish, there wouldn't be billionaires. Okay? That said, most of them are silent or are busy bankrolling more neoliberal politicians like Andrew Cuomo, for example. Getting back to Mamdani in New York, right? Who's getting funded by, these other billionaires, Trump-supporting billionaires, okay, in order to try to stamp out someone like Mamdani, who is not some wild-eyed leftist, who's just somebody who wants the city to work for the people. Look, what I'm saying here is at the end of the day, we are not getting out of the situation that we are in by doing these same old politics. Neoliberalism is a dead end. It leads us to exactly what we are facing here right now, today. What's the solution? The solution is to go left. Before there isn't a country left. Okay. We're having trouble with laws fixing your tax havens because we have states that act as those, such as New Hampshire. Indeed. Again, bought politicians. Reagan raised my taxes 11 times while lowering taxes on their uber rich to all-time lows. Yup. It's exactly the kind of alarm that we have been raising for a long time. Longer than I have been in the game. Okay? There have been people that have been pushing back against this for so long. I have been in politics for about the last 10 years, doing shows like this, talking about these issues. And I am a newcomer to this, compared to some of the other people who have been sounding the alarm for so long. And yet there are so many people who don't listen, so many people who simp for billionaires, who continue to lick those boots and say, don't worry, it's going to trickle down. No, it's not. And it never, ever will. Okay. VMan29397 with super chat says, I've got bad news. The MAGA governor of Puerto Rico, Jennifer Gonzalez, is trying to convince Donald Trump to waste billions of dollars to reopen the 20-year-old derelict military bases in Puerto Rico. So, yeah, that does suck. once again, more disastrous military spending for literally no reason other than to prop up the military industrial complex, of which I'm sure the esteemed governor of Puerto Rico, who is a conservative, is going to benefit from. So there you go. Anyone who says we have an extreme left wing doesn't know what left wing is. Exactly. We have a whole lot of people that think that that welfare programs are socialism, which they are not. Okay. But that's what unfortunately too many people believe. And so yeah, there we go. Extreme healthcare. Yeah, I'm max left. Like, what the hell? Yeah, okay, I want healthcare. That's max left. Sure, then call me max left. All right? Call me an extremist because I believe that people should have healthcare. Okay. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. Thank you for watching. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. If Bernie was in Europe, he would be considered center right. Welfare programs is socialism. It's not communism. No. Socialism is when the workers own the means of production. It's when the factory workers get together and they actually own the companies. That's what socialism is. Okay, and so there's a lot of people that don't understand what that actually is, what that actually means. And again, it's because of decades of propaganda against that. And so, no, socialism isn't welfare programs. It's just welfare programs. That's all they are. Okay. All right. That's it. Again, thank you for watching. Please like and share if you haven't already. Consider becoming a supporter of the show. I learned something. Hey, all right. I love that. I love it when people learn stuff and actually take something away. So I'm glad I could do that. Socialism means, democratizing your workplace. Yeah, basically, that's really it. And worker co-ops is one kind of like half and half example where you have a worker control board along with a corporate control board, and they make decisions together. It's kind of your halfsies. And it works in Europe quite a bit. And so it works there. And it's not, it's not full socialism. So, but anyway, VMan293997 says, United States, be warned, neoliberalism will turn you into Puerto Rico, a ruin outside of the trendy tourist spots. My cousins have 7 holes in the roof and roads littered with potholes. Hey, I live in a state that's famous for potholes, so I hear you there. And there are places like Louisiana that don't even have running sewer systems, okay, sanitation. And they've got those old-timey diseases that also go along with that. And so, we've got a lot of places in the continental United States that are facing some pretty dire circumstances as well. So we are already there. Oh, and by the way, one of the arguments too, and I know I keep saying like, oh, I gotta go, but I keep coming back to this because you all have some really great comments. There's the argument too of like, oh, and this ties into minimum wage, for example. Well, they don't have minimum wage laws in Europe. That's because they have incredibly strong labor rights. In some countries, they have very strong labor unions, and in some countries as well where they have worker co-ops, for example, they don't exactly need unions because they have, these companies are employee owned and controlled. So, they have these, again, worker co-ops where they don't need minimum wage laws, for example, because they have either strong unions or worker controlled corporations. And not in every country, though, I don't believe. For example, Denmark. I believe Denmark is the example where they do not have minimum wage laws, as far as I can tell, as far as I'm aware of, and perhaps I am wrong. I'm not, you know, I'm not immune to being wrong, but they do have incredibly strong labor rights, and so they still have a higher minimum wage for fast food workers than we do here in the United States. It's like 20-something bucks an hour. And so, you know, hey, if you want to get rid of the minimum wage, just make unions incredibly powerful. There's that. And the potholes are huge enough to swallow a car. Okay, I can admit that we do not have quite that bad of potholes. So yeah, that is a major problem. Okay, anyway. Thank you all for watching. Tomorrow I'm going to be on thisspace.tv over on their YouTube channel. So it's This Space TV on YouTube. We'll be doing the normal, usual show that I always do. I will try to provide a link in order to do that show. Check out This Space. It's a great place to for creators to go. You know, Boston Brian does a fantastic show before me, and of course, Andrea also does a fantastic show after me. So I'm right there, 2 p.m. Eastern, on This Space, and it's gonna be a really good show, as always. So thank you all. I heard there was a major announcement coming out of the White House at 2 p.m. I've heard nothing. It is probably nothing of consequence. Probably just a proof of life after this weekend, because a lot of people were like, did Donald Trump die over the weekend? We don't know. First time tuning in, love the show. Thanks a bunch. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I love that. I love seeing new viewers. Welcome. Hopefully you continue to enjoy the show and enjoy the different segments that I try to present. So, all right. So anyway, Michigan has bad potholes for so long. We don't know what's original road and what's patchy filler. Yes, yeah, I trust me. I know personally. All right. Anyway, thank you. Become a patron, patreon.com/jeffwaldorf, or become a channel member. It's for independent progressive media. There is no paywall. I don't do paywalls, and I don't do sponsorships. I'm not sitting in the Poly Market studio, and I'm not getting paid by Chorus or anything like that. I am truly independent progressive media, so I need your support more than ever. Again, things are tough. Things are tough out there for progressive creators, and so anything you can do. Thank you for the super chats, by the way, V-Man. Really appreciate that. That helps the show goes to keep us running, as well as our Patreon and memberships on our channel page. So those are ways that you can support the show. Thank you all. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, everybody.